Welcome back, everyone. We're looking at another local event, this time, once again, at Alternate Universes in Bluebell. Now, the matchup this time is Yellow Boba versus Luke Skywalker. And this is not a particular match that I was really prepared for. This is the first time that I'm going up against both this player as well as this list. So we're going to try things out, see what we can learn. Yellow Boba, I've run it at a few other events. I do like the deck, but I've noticed some glaring issues with it. However, what I don't know, at least going into this game, was what you expect out of Luke. I played other light side blue decks before at different events, either with Boba or other things, and it didn't go spectacularly. I knew I would have to come out of the gates pretty quick, need to keep applying pressure and try and close the game out before their late game bombs, such as, well, Luke Skywalker, both the leader as well as the unit, come out. Now, through the magic of editing, I jumped ahead a little bit. My opponent is going to lead off with the initiative in this particular game. So we're just rolling it out there. But my game plan was just get into space, which I do get, spoiler alert, do get into that arena early on and well. But this was pretty scary, to be honest. And I'd be concerned that this game overall felt very, I don't want to say it was very variance laden, but like variance influence, where I feel like I legitimately did get lucky. There are some plays that we'll discuss that I think did also play into it. But I think ultimately I drew very well. And if I didn't, we would have lost. Another point of note, and we discussed it after the game, was what if ECL was instead Echo Base Ray in the 30 HP bases? That would have made a significant difference in this game in particular. Whether it is otherwise like worthwhile, otherwise, I don't know. Now, my opponent leads off with Alliance Dispatcher, me with the Outer Rim Headhunter, and then we get a Luke activation for the shield. I don't know if that matters. I mean, if you don't know, I'm going to pause real quickly. This Boba deck, this early, I don't know what could have come down to kill that thing. I mean, getting the shield early is fine, and it's good to protect this guy, but I'm sure he's not, based on the whole one game, it doesn't seem valuable enough to justify protecting long-term. So maybe taking the initiative here would have been better for my opponent. I'm not sure. This is just like thinking out loud kind of thing. But anyway, we move on from there. As mentioned, I felt that I needed to be in space. I forget whether I think I had like a crafty smuggler or something at this point. Maybe if somebody pauses it, you can look through my hand. But I go with the 7th Fleet Defender. Like I said, I want to build the Armada, get control of the space arena, continue to pressure there, because I'm not worried, at least at the moment, about the ground arena. However, when Yoda comes down, this is where things start getting scary. So pausing again real quick, I, as mentioned before, didn't know what to expect out of my opponent. And early restore units like this really feel like they're going to be crippling. Or restore units in general. I've lost a number of games to say home one. That is the stabilization piece. And the stabilization coming down this early in the game, especially as you can note, and you'll see momentarily as we continue, there's one resource open, which means that Yoda is going to get a shield. That's going to come back into play later on. But this allows me to keep the initiative. This seems like a more reasonable thing to shield. Like I definitely agree with this, because I'm going to want to remove that thing. I have bounce effects, but obviously it protects from damage and from combat. Kind of redundant there, but you get the idea. The Yoda hypothetically lets him stabilize, but here's the thing. Going into this turn, and again, maybe the shield wasn't worth it. Maybe the initiative is more important. I was very fortunate to have access to my next play, which we should see coming out now. I had a lot of internal debate throughout this game. So Cunning comes down. I'm going to tap down, exhaust their units, and then I'm giving +4 to the 7th Fleet Defender just because it has shield. It seemed like the most logical thing. I was very concerned only because my own unfamiliarity with the game and the card pool. Was there anything out of my opponent that could actually remove the defender? I don't like playing Cunning this early in the turn unless I have to, and I felt like I absolutely had to here. I felt I needed to delay. It might have been worth waiting, or maybe I bounce the Yoda. I think bouncing Yoda probably was the better play. I think this was a mistake because forcing my opponent to replay the Yoda would have made life much easier several turns from now. And the Alliance Dispatcher, while good, isn't necessarily the biggest deal in the world. Like, okay, they get a little bit of ramp. Maybe tapping them down is better. Let me know down in the comments what your opinions are. Now, as far as the regional sympathizers, which is coming down now, that's part of the reason why I wanted to pause, just to comment on it. Now there are 2 Restore 2 units, and I'm sweating bullets at this point because I was very concerned that I'm not actually going to be able to push enough damage. Yes, it's a 25 health base, but I only have 2 units. They have 3, and 2 of them are healing. Like I'm netting 1 damage a turn. That is not enough. So I get in for what I can. I do get a big chunk here because of the cunning, but this allows my opponent to steal back initiative. So we're going into the Boba turn with initiative on the wrong side of the board, at least from my perspective anyway. So I was a little concerned there. Plus they can, of course, ramp up to a 6-drop, hypothetically, because they got 5 resources and then the regional sympathizers. ECL is still available. And this is a turn where I think I made some errors. Well, there's several errors across several turns, but in this particular case, maybe the error was really on the previous turn. Maybe I should have just held back the outer rim. Like, definitely swing with the 7th Fleet, but hold back the outer rim so that way I could, this turn, play what's coming up, the Bodhi Rook, which you'll see momentarily. And I'm pausing here just because there was a slight edit there because I had to take some time to think after I just got nailed with Traitorous. I do think that my opponent might have made some mistakes here with not eliminating the outer rim sooner with the 7th Fleet, but it does ultimately get there. Spoiler alert, I know. Well, I guess technically they didn't, not technically, they just literally didn't have an opportunity to kill it much faster than they did because I get in with the outer rim. They are returning fire with the sympathizers, which allows them to heal up a little bit. So we see the sympathizers get in, going to push some damage, going to heal up a little bit, dropping them down to a more manageable life total. I did have that big chunk, but if you look at the board, like, again, they have 2 restores. They have control of basically both arenas. I did not feel good about this at all for what I presume are going to be obvious reasons. I do still have Boba available, and I was debating between deploying it, but I wanted to run out Bodhi just to see, like, hey, was there something else nasty waiting for me? And I see Bright Hope, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and Luke Skywalker unit. And this is where I was debating with my, well, not debating, but I was commenting to my opponent, hey, maybe if I played the Bodhi earlier, I could have hit the Traitorous, but I really would have needed to play it on the prior turn because they took initiative, and that would have meant very different things for the scope of this game. Again, let me know if you think that this is a incorrect play. So my opponent gets in, pushes a little more damage here. Now, here's the thing. I initially thought, even when I was editing, it took me a few minutes. I'm like, wait a minute, did they punch face? No, they actually punch Bodhi with Yoda, which removes the shield, gets Bodhi ready to be eliminated, but it gives me an opportunity to get the Boba out there, remove the shield, like I said. I don't know if this was worth it. I guess it's fine. Like, this is probably reasonable. I'm only debating it, not because, hey, I think this was an obvious misplay, but just what were the other options? And I think this is ultimately fine. They obviously still have the Dispatcher, which you'll see momentarily is going to clean up the Bodhi, but this gives me the opportunity to get Boba out there. So here's where the 7th Fleet removes the outer rim. Like I was saying earlier, I initially thought, before looking back at it, that, like, hey, they might have had a turn where they could have got it, but you play Traitorous, I'll attack with the other one, which is why I attacked with it so early. So my debate here again is, do I go face? Because am I pushing enough damage? I knew I wanted to close the game out, but I felt that the sympathizers here was too much of a threat to leave on the board, both from a damage perspective, as well as the restore. The restore was going to add up over the course of the game, and as much as I wanted to punch face, this allowed me to ready some resources, at least threaten something else, although I know that my hand was not spectacular at this point. And then we do get the removal that I was talking about earlier, where Bodhi came out, netted nothing, and then removed some shields, which, all right, fine. So my answer play is another outer rim. which is not super thrilling. And there were a couple things I was debating trying to do here, but I didn't. I ultimately do nothing and just pass, which, again, from this position, even though I had Boba and the Outer Rim out, they only have 9 damage on them. We're getting into the later turns where both Luke is going to get deployed and other larger threatening things that I know are available now, such as Obi-Wan and Luke unit, are going to show up and probably lock me out of the game. I knew I only had 1, maybe 2 more turns to really complete this. So as we move on to the next one, I was kind of just hoping for some RNG luck here. And maybe I played this poorly up to this point, and I'm open to that idea, but I'm not sure what else I was supposed to do on a lot of these turns. It was basically, these were the units I had available, and I was trying to force space. So we do get Obi-Wan coming down. Obi-Wan ECL'd out to remove Boba. I do make the error of dropping Boba in the graveyard for a little bit, and then I realize it momentarily and correct it. There we go. But we're looking at removal in space, and then I have literally nothing in the ground arena. So at this point, I feel locked out of the game. But to the rescue, this is what I was referencing earlier about positive variance in my favor. Just being a little lucky. We get the cunning to bounce the 7th Fleet Defender, to put it back in my hand, and then also to buff the Outer Rim. This gives me a huge damage push to try and offset the healing that Yoda's still continually doing. And we do get the Luke deploy here. I do have a couple resources open, which I was intentionally saving, because I do have a No Good To Me Dead, which should be coming down this turn. I forget whether I played the No Good To Me Dead or I attack with the Outer Rim first. I probably played the No Good To Me Dead. Yeah. So we No Good To Me Dead just to make sure that I'm trying to win the race. The shield tokens don't matter as much. And since he's only a 4 attack, I do wonder, and again, I'm open to feedback on this, maybe I should have hit the Yoda with the No Good To Me Dead in order to pseudo deal 4 extra damage, because they would miss the attack this turn, they miss the attack next turn. And that does come into play. And the more I think about it, the more I think that might have been correct. So I'm just removing the token there because I was using that to denote the cunning. I found it easier because I've had a number of people be like, wait, where was the +4 from? Oh, well, it was the cunning that I played early in the turn. The turn structure in Star Wars Unlimited does feel like it sometimes can lend itself to people being like, oh yeah, that thing happened 10 whatevers ago, and then, you know, you kind of lose track of things. So marking it in this fashion, maybe I should just leave the card out there. The card probably makes more sense, but we push them up to 15, getting that 6 damage in there. But we do have the Luke, and I'm once again faced with an empty board. Well, I guess it wasn't completely empty most parts of the rest of the game, but we do have the Fett's Fire Spray in order to continue pressure. And this was kind of my Hail Mary, which I think against a lot of decks it's going to be. Shocker to anybody who's played Fire Spray or played with or against Boba before, that the Fire Spray is the thing that you have to worry about. But I think the Fire Spray is my only hope here. No pun intended, or play on words intended. So we get the Yoda push in here. This, again, remember, if I had hit No Good To Me Dead on Yoda instead, maybe we would have been okay. But since I knew the Luke was coming down, I was a little concerned about them just straight up racing me. But with the push from the Fire Spray, we're, as you'd imagine, starting to close in on the end of the game. My opponent chose here, and this is something that I've been trying. I'm going to pause real quick. My opponent chose to try and push with everything else, which I understand. However, I will say I have been trying, and I don't know if this is correct, in a lot of matchups, whether I'm playing this deck or I'm playing a different deck, when it gets to this stage in the game, my priority almost entirely shifts to maintaining initiative. Because if I have that much damage on my base, and the Fire Spray is, of course, a threat, or if there's a different threat, whatever. I'm in danger of dying, especially against yellow because of Surprise Strike and even Shoot First or other buff effects. It wouldn't be ridiculous to go, oops, you're dead, kind of thing. And since we know my opponent had the Bright Hope, I think we definitely caught them off guard with the Fire Spray. If they had the Bright Hope out there, I don't know that we can win this game. I don't think I had a bounce spell in hand. But either way, I'm able to take initiative after they punch. Despite the heal, they just don't have that much health remaining. And then I lucked into, once again, Surprise Strike. So Surprise Strike for 8 is going to close it out. I'm sure a lot of people have heard this one. So I have some thoughts on this. Let's switch over. So yeah, I don't know exactly how this matchup is supposed to play out. Based on what I've seen other people talk about both of these decks and what I've seen from a number of other creators, most recently at KTOD, shout out to the graphic they put out, which I think is a very succinct way of describing the relationship between the different archetypes. I would expect Luke is favored. I don't know how it goes post-board. Obviously, you can sometimes just get there, but I think this one ultimately came down to both my opponent and I being unfamiliar with exactly how this matchup plays out. But being the more aggressive list, I was able to just get there, essentially. I don't think this was particularly me playing very well or my opponent necessarily playing very poorly or anything like that. It was just the way the cards fell in this particular case. Now, as to playing the matchup as a whole, I would expect Luke, if you lean into more, like have a Sentinel, play a Sentinel, especially in space, you only need to get to a certain point before you just absolutely have taken over the game. And I'm worried about running Boba in the future, yellow Boba. We'll see. I do have a couple tournaments coming up, and I'm still unclear what I'm going to be playing. By the time this goes live, I may have decided, but for now, I'm still trying to find that build that makes me feel comfortable. But either way, I'm going to call it for now. As always, everyone, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching, and tune in next time for more Random's Thoughts.